Don't you hate pants?
Hey, have a seat for a second. Look it, I have never seen a bunch of guys look so down when something bad happens. What are you guys, like prima donna perfect that if you can't handle adversity, so shit's not going right. It's not working the last 10 days. Get your heads out of your ass and make it work by outworking the opposition. You kill two men, and then we stand around and watch it, and while they come to the bench like this, and when the power play is not working, so you're trying to stick handle, you're looking like this and not standing. Outwork the guys. If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and want it. But you're not looking like you want it. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself, and nobody wants anybody that's feeling sorry for themselves. You got 20 minutes, you're down by one. Surely we can deal with this.
Welcome to Giles and Boys podcast. We are protesting or holding out from unnamed bars, so we're doing this over the internets like most people usually do nowadays. But
like real bloggers.
By Ben. Ben, did you have a lovely weekend?
I did. I spent it up at the cabin with some friends. It was a good time.
That's always a good time. Fire and beer is always a good way to kill a weekend. Also,
I had s'mores, and I have not had them in earnest probably in like 5-6 years, something like that. It's been a while, and goddamn, are those delicious when they're actually like freshly made in a campfire.
S'mores sound really good.
They're so good. I might just start a fire in my backyard, because I still have like half the stuff. I still have like 2/3 of a box of graham crackers, and my friends didn't want them nearly as much as I did, but I might just start a fire in my backyard so I can make s'mores.
Nice. Just make all the s'mores. Yeah, I was at a grad party yesterday. They had a fire going there at the end, but I had to buzz out to get to another party for a friend who's getting married in a couple weeks. So had I stayed, I don't know, maybe that could have been an opportunity for s'mores.
Yeah,
but, we'll never know. I did eat like literally 2 pounds of guac yesterday.
Oh my god.
It was so good. It's so fresh. Fresh guac is addicting.
I gotta think if you're eating 2 pounds of something, especially something with that many, like, what is it, like, the healthy fats they have in it. They're probably, like, there's going to be some repercussions, Giles.
We'll see. I also, it was a good mixture of guac and beer at the grad party.
Even better.
So, yeah, it was a good time. Shout out to my cousin Jeremy, graduated high school. That's why we had a grad party. So, I have mentioned him before on the podcast. He played for Roseville. Mm-hmm. I did a nice piece on him earlier in the year. That was fun. So, and another shout out, congrats to his brother Josh, who graduated from college last weekend. That's why we went to Mancini's, as I alluded to on the show, and that was just all kinds of delightful.
Cool.
Just a steak that melts in your mouth. It's a good time.
I still have not been there yet.
Oh, you should.
Well, actually, no, I have been there. I went in there to buy a gift card for my parents, and I have never actually eaten there.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say whether to go there or not. I mean, they need to pay me to say to go there.
That's how this works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose we could. I suppose we get into it. I suppose since we're whoring out for sponsors this early in the show, we might as well remind everyone to shoot us a rating on iTunes if that's how they listen to us. Because I don't know what that does. Mm-hmm. So you're in charge of that. Does that do anything?
Well, I mean, I think it does, actually. It probably pops us up a little bit higher in the search field. So right now, we made that wonderful change where we added Minnesota Wild to our show title, and that put us where you just search Minnesota Wild on iTunes and we pop up like, I don't know, third or fourth. And more ratings and or reviews likely would notch us up maybe a spot or two on that, perhaps. So yes, it actually would do something, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We also have a perfect rating so far. But,
yeah. I'm not inviting somebody
will come along and go, I hate
exactly.
those guys.
I'm not inviting somebody to come along and ruin it, but last week I actually asked for feedback on the show on Twitter, and I don't know if it was like too late at night that I asked or what, but I never got anything back from anybody. We're looking for feedback. We want to be better. We want to have we want to keep our title as the best Minnesota Wild podcast out there. So with that perfect rating that we do boast. So all feedback is welcome, whether it be via DM, tweet, etc.
Maybe we can find a way to send out some kind of survey here at the end of the podcast season. But I don't know. We'll figure that out later.
Do you want more soup talk or less soup talk?
Yeah, no kidding.
Do we not talk enough about jerseys?
Well, no, we have to filter that out by people who actually are Team Soup or Team Andre. The Team Andre's opinions, I don't care about.
Of course.
Anyway, I guess we got a couple of newsworthy things here before we get into the main topic for this episode, which is our armchair GM segment, which I've spent way too much time prepping for.
Oh, I know, right?
The first newsworthy thing was today, Sunday afternoon, Michael Russo broke the news that the Wild were letting go head trainer Don Fuller and strength coach Kirk Olson, guys who had been around, quite a while, and in Fuller's case, since day one of this team. Mm-hmm. Just kind of adds to the general house cleaning behind the bench, really. Mm-hmm. Don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on, athletic trainer and strength coach, but seemingly those guys were well liked, but I don't know, just another changing of the guard, I guess.
Yeah, and like we talked about last week when they started shuffling coaches around, that kind of thing's going to happen. So, I don't even know that it's a Boudreaux thing, where it's like, hey, I've got this guy, I've got this. I mean, maybe he has a preference on a strength coach, or even on a trainer, but I don't know. We don't know that yet. And also, from a fan's perspective, I mean, it's kind of like assistant coaches, where it's really hard to judge, if your trainers / strength coaches are doing a good job. I mean, it's not just as easy as did anybody get hurt. So I don't know. It's a tough thing to kind of nail down and to really pass any kind of judgment on. I think Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the final decision on who gets hired comes down to a couple of guys who wear letters. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic in that organization.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that was kind of a unexpected, weird Sunday news. Usually, you don't get news like that on a Sunday, but here we are. It's weird. And then earlier in the week, I believe it was Craig Custance of ESPN had tweeted that the Wild's first-round pick, number 15 overall, was in play on the trade market, and you kind of had a piece on why the Wild should trade their first-round pick.
When did he report that?
That was Friday, late Friday.
Ha!
Late Friday news dump.
So I wrote that before he even. Wait, am I his source?
Yep, that pre.
Because I wrote that Thursday
predated
night.
his tweet.
Dude, no. I didn't know about that. I was out of town. That's awesome. I'm breaking news before news is breaking.
Custance. Maybe you can give us a bump on the ESPN podcast.
Yeah, I mean, come on, dude. If you're gonna use my stuff, at least cite it. Jeez, professionalism, guys. All right, well, yeah, all the more reason for people to read my work because I beat ESPN to the punch. Not that that's anything to brag about these days, but yeah, that's right. That's why you come to me.
And then he did also add that, the player has to be a good young player who can contribute right now. And I would guess that that's probably a top line center.
Gee, I feel like I almost read that somewhere, or perhaps wrote that somewhere. Good job, Craig.
I don't know. Did you say something on that?
I might have, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, you could promote it right now.
Well, yeah, it's like you mentioned on Friday. I wrote the I love it, and I prefaced it. I tried to as hard as I can. I don't think it even can come across how much I really love drafts. I really love drafts. The draft coverage we did for the NHL draft last season, I had an absolute blast. Me, you, Charlie Beatty, and Nate Wells contributed a fair amount too, and I thought we did an outstanding job covering the draft last year. I won't be able to touch that kind of coverage this year, but I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy any kind of draft coverage. I'm a big MLB draft fan. That's coming up on Thursday. I may or may not be able to watch that live, but I have watched the last 5 of those live. So really, really love drafts. Really love mock drafts, first round picks, etc. But it just makes a lot of sense, I feel like, for the Wild to deal their first-round pick this season. It's kind of a window of opportunity argument, I guess, that I made, in that, you're going to draft a guy who's at least probably 2 to 3 years out, maybe even 3 to 4 years out, at the number 15 spot. You're not getting a top 5 pick who's going to slot into your second line next year. So it makes a lot of sense to deal it because that's a very valuable pick still. I mean, the 15th overall pick is still very valuable. And if that's the difference between, getting or not getting a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Derek Stepan, all these guys that we've talked about, you got to pull the trigger on that. You can't be afraid to deal that. And I know the cupboard is bare. I know that, our prospect cache isn't exactly as deep as it should be. But at some point, with a veteran core like this team has, you kind of have to push your chips in a little bit. So that was my whole argument. The caveat that I added was that, if you can move up in the draft somehow, some miraculous way, and get into that top 5 range where you're getting, like a franchise cornerstone type player, then obviously you do that too. I really don't think that's happening, but that was the caveat that I added. But, yeah, I mean, even though they only have 4 picks in this draft, it just makes a lot of sense to leverage that first-round pick into getting that top-line center that you desperately need.
Yeah, kind of in the last week or so, I started warming up to the idea. Like you just said 2 weeks ago, the Wild should trade their first-round pick. I would have, said, yeah, you're crazy. Don't say that. Because like you said, the cupboard's really bare, but
yeah.
Then in the last week, I kind of realized that, they're probably going to have to move it to get a big player that they need, and you also hit the head on the nail. Eventually, you got to push your chips all in.
Yep.
I think this is the year to do it.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting thing to watch here as the off season begins, and this could actually be our last podcast before the off season.
True. Yeah, it's very likely.
Pittsburgh is up 2-1 on the Sharks.
His game 6 is
next
Sunday. Yeah. So that it's very possible that it's over at that point, but we'll see.
Yeah, the way Pittsburgh played in the first 2 games, it probably even looked like
it looked like it wasn't going to go 5.
But
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. I didn't see game 2 or 3, so I've really been out of touch with this.
Yeah, I watched a fair amount of game 2, and luckily we have a dish up at the cabin, so I was able to catch a little bit of game 3, and it looks like it's a really close series. I mean, that game 2 was razor thin, obviously, and the Penguins went in overtime, and game 3 was more of the same, and then the Sharks went in overtime. So, we don't need to cover it too in depth, but yeah, It could be a very good series. We'll see what happens in Game 4. Game 4 is kind of the linchpin, I guess. If you get Penguins 3-1, that's kind of it. But if you get that 2-2, that's looking pretty damn fine.
Yeah. And then kind of our last really newsworthy topic here was earlier in the week. I forget when it was. It was Wednesday or Thursday, if I recall. It was widely reported that Mike Yeo was in St. Louis meeting with Blues brass about potentially being an assistant to Ken Hitchcock this season and possibly being the heir apparent to the Blues head coaching position when that becomes available next offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that be a real interesting turn if Mike Yeo ends up coaching the Blues of all teams?
Yeah, and I've seen, since that news came out, I saw a fair amount of tweets on it, mostly from the crowd that wasn't big fans of Mike Yeo, which I totally understand. But that roster is kind of strikingly similar to the Wild roster in a lot of ways. And it's like, they've got some guys who are, I don't want to call them enforcer types, but knuckleheaded, to say the least. And they've also got a veteran core that you could probably lean on a little bit. So it's like, well, you're looking... And also, Hitch and Yeo, it seems like, those tendencies that Yeo had that kind of drove everyone nuts, Hitch kind of has the same thing. So it maybe is a little bit more of the same. So it is interesting, though. The fact that he would go to a team in the division makes it, a little eyebrow raising, to say the least. I'm surprised that he can't find a head coaching job otherwise, though. Maybe it's just his reputation. Maybe the whole Wild thing really scares other teams off. But I'm a little surprised that he's not. Did he even interview in Anaheim?
I don't know. It just
I don't know
seemed
that he
like
did
once
either.
Boudreau got hired and then Ottawa hired, who was it, Guy Boucher?
Yeah.
The head coaching roundabout just kind of came to a sudden halt.
Yeah. Well, and
Now,
there's nobody in Calgary yet either, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Calgary doesn't have one. Anaheim doesn't have one.
Yeah.
So, you'd like to think that those decisions are going to get made here in the next week before the offseason starts, because theoretically you'd like to have a head coach in place so you can kind of figure out what your team needs going into the offseason.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I just sit here and talk about hockey. I'm not in the room.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that's an interesting... If that happens, we kind of all thought Yeo was going to go right back to a head coach somewhere, and now we don't really know. And even the assistant coaches, there's a lot of assistant openings in the league, and that's all kind of at a standstill right now, even with the Wild, who
it kind of
still
is.
have
I don't know
positions.
if Calgary and Anaheim are really like that big of dominoes to fall, but it feels like, even the assistant market is kind of dried up. And if you're Yeo, if you haven't been contacted by Calgary or Anaheim for an opening, then you move on. And the best job that he probably could find would be this job. You're an assistant coach for a year, and you're basically already anointed the next head coach. So, that's obviously the best that he can do as far as job prospects and becoming a head coach in the NHL again. So, makes total sense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. And, I don't know. That's all I got. I'm short on words today.
That's fine.
It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get on with it here. The last, I don't know, however many podcasts, 4, 5 shows,
Something like that.
We've kind of gone through various parts of the Wild roster and free agents, contract extension, trades. What am I missing?
Well, we went through it piece by piece. First, we covered the UFAs, then we covered the RFAs, then we talked about potential trade targets. and then free agency outside of the team. So yeah, we've really kind of tried to dissect each part of the Wild offseason before it happens here, and it all kind of leads up to this, I suppose. Not counting the draft, which we will start soon enough.
Right. So yeah, and this week we're basically what we did is we put ourselves in the GM chair for the off season, and we basically got to make the roster for next season. And if you go to, I think it's capfriendly.com, they got a very handy dandy armchair GM tool you can use, and you can just make the roster right there. Although when you go in and you look at, you can publish the roster, you can go in and look at what other people have done. There's just ridiculous nonsense NHL 16 trades that make my head hurt.
Yeah, because the website really doesn't turn things down so much. Like, it doesn't say, no, that's a BS trade. It just kind of is like, okay, if you want to see what this looks like, this is what that would look like.
You can go in and rate that particular roster. And,
right. So there is some checks and balances there, but not from the actual website system itself. Like, they let you do literally anything. And it's up to you to kind of make trades that, you think could possibly happen. So from there, it's like, well, I don't think that's very feasible or blah, blah, blah. But, I didn't look at any of the other Wild teams saved, but I shudder to think. I mean, there's got to be 19 to 82 Wild teams saved on here that buy out Thomas Vanek and sign Kyle Oposo. So,
also in this, we tried to be, as realistic as we possibly could. We didn't, like this one I'm looking at, a Rangers fan just has a mass overhaul of the roster, which includes a trade with the Wild that sends Brodin Coyle Halla Dumba to New York for Stepan Kreider, Dylan McIlrath, and C. Anderson. I don't know who that is, but Dylan McIlrath kills the deal for me because he is nothing more than your fourth-line grinder Curtis Gabriel type.
Right.
Pass.
Yeah, I don't think the Wild are...
That's just a ridiculous haul.
Yeah, I mean, as a Rangers fan, you probably got to love that, right? Like, obviously Stepan's a great player, but, I mean, you're getting just a boatload of really good young players back. So that stuff runs rampant, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is the definition of NHL 16.
Yeah.
That just...
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
So no, I don't know. Do you wanna lead off here? Or?
Sure. I know that you went a little more nuts than I did. I went. I kind of just went for something that I think is very realistic and something that a lot of people have been talking about. I just kind of wanted to see it for myself. So what I did. First and foremost is I made the Nugent Hopkins trade. So I traded with Edmonton, and what I sent them was Marco Scandella and our first-round pick. And with the caveat that if it costs more than that, I probably would still make the trade. And then the two corresponding trades after that I made kind of, would fill in those blanks maybe. I also traded Darcy Kempfer to Buffalo for one of their second-round picks, which I did as kind of a joke because it's a Buffalo second-round pick, so it's probably ours. And then I sent Jason Zucker to Montreal for a second-round pick. And that maybe kind of is a hope and a dream to get a second-round pick out of him. But I think it's possible. I think that it's something a team would be willing to take a chance on, a guy who was on pace for 30 goals 2 years ago for a second-round pick. If they have multiples, it kind of makes a lot of sense. So at the end of the day, the only players that we're getting back is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. We're dealing Scandella, Kemper, Zucker, and a first, but we're getting back 2 second-round picks. So if the price for Nugent-Hopkins is higher, maybe one or both of those second-round picks, or one or both of those players instead. Maybe we send Zucker along with Scandella. Maybe we send Kemper along with Scandella. maybe we send all three of them, and that's what it takes to get the deal done. I don't think you be afraid of that. I think that if the deal requires Scandella, Kemper, Zucker, and a first for Nugent Hopkins, I don't want to fanboy over Nugent Hopkins too hard, but I think you do it. I think that's a risk that I'm willing to take with a guy, with two RFAs that you more or less can't afford for one of your defensemen, which you're very deep at, for a guy who has the potential to be a first-line center, which you don't have. So those are the trades that I made. And then from there, I re-signed Dumba to a bridge deal. I gave him 2 years at $2 million. I think that's probably right in the right neighborhood for him. I don't know these things that well. I'm sure there's a way out there to figure out exactly what the deal is, but I figured 2 years at $2 million would probably. I mean, that might even be a little high for him, to be honest. But I don't know. So, and then another.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. And then another RFA that I re-signed is Tyler Graovac. I signed him for $750,000. Which maybe you can get him for less, but I figured he's not going to get the minimum, but he's not going to get anything over $1 million for sure, obviously, because he has so very little NHL time. But you've got his rights; you might as well re-sign him. It's a guy that I'd feel pretty comfortable with him, slotting in as your fourth line center this season. So those are the RFAs that I signed. The UFAs that I signed, I re-signed Ryan Carter. We talked about this on our UFA episode. I think if you bring back any of those fourth-line guys from this season, he's one of them. I really like what he does on the penalty kill. I think he can add a tick of offense every now and then, and I much prefer him to Porter or Stoll, obviously. I wasn't able to re-sign Justin Fontaine. And that is because I have no worldly idea what his cap hit will be. So it makes it kind of tough to sign him on this thing, because you enter in your own cap hit. So if I wanted to, I could maybe try to sign... I mean, on this system, I could sign Justin Fontaine to $600,000 for a season. That's not going to happen in real life. So, and the cap on this, I think... I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it's set a touch low for this projection. It's only set at $71.4 million. And I have heard that's been rumored to be up to $74 million. So I think that's the casualty of it being on the low end, which I think that's what they're shooting for. This is the low end of, I think, what the salary cap will be. So if you get a salary cap that's more like 72 or 73 million, I think that you can sign Fontaine. I don't think you need to give him more than $2 million a year. I really don't see that happening, but I think that's a worthwhile investment because he slots so well into the top 9 when you need him to. But under this particular model, I literally wasn't able to. The only way I could have signed him was by buying somebody out. And I'm sorry, I love Fonzie, for what he is, but I'm not buying out Thomas Vanek just so I can re-sign Justin Fontaine. It's just not something I want to do. And so the only other UFA signing that I made was Anton Khudobin as our backup goaltender for $1.5 million for the season. I figured he's a pretty solid backup. We saw him play pretty well against us, Lord knows, in that one Ducks game. And the Ducks kind of have a 2-goalie system, so he's more or less expendable for them. I don't think they're going to make a really big push to re-sign him. So I signed him as our backup with Darcy Kemper out of the picture now. So that was my offseason. Just to kind of run it down real quick, my top line, or my top 9 would be Parisi, Koivu, Granlund, Pominville, Hall, and Niederreiter, Vanek, Nugent Hopkins, Coyle, Carter, Graovac, and then unfortunately for some Wild fans, I have to slot in Curtis Gabriel as the fourth line wing because that's all that I could afford under this model. So that's $71.4 million. Not only edges out Justin Fontaine, but it's like I have $27,000 in cap space right now. So everyone else is making over $700,000. Gabriel's only making $660,000. So that's all I could really do, unfortunately. But I obviously there's a lot of moving parts there, and you just kind of hope that cap is a little bit higher than that because it's so crucial to what the Wild have to do this year, basically signing an entire fourth line. they're going to need every single dollar they can get for that. So,
yeah, the cap hit, being more likely that the $71.4 million really was a kind of a crunch, and
it's brutal.
That's what we went with in this scenario.
Yeah.
So in my scenario, the first casualty of said low cap hit is Thomas Vanek. I wasn't happy. I told you that when I kind of gave you a little rundown of what I did. And I really tried to work around it, but I couldn't. And it's gonna really kill me in the next off season when that $2.5 million is on the books. But just to make ends meet in this roster construction, I had to buy him out.
You just got to really hope the Looney bounces back.
Yeah, and so that frees up a space in the top 6 for a guy like Nino Niederreiter to jump in, and then with that I brought back Jason Zucker, gave him a kind of a bridge deal, maybe see if he can get his crap figured out,
sure,
get back onto a 60, not 60, that'd be great though, 30 goal pace. I gave him $3.5 million for 2 years, so it was a $1.75 million.
Oh,
cap
okay.
hit.
I was gonna say, I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, I'm paying him Granlund money.
Yeah, no. Yeah, 1.75. I think that that's the weird thing is it's so hard to judge what to sign these guys at, because it's like, well, I mean, you could make a great argument why Zucker should be paid $3 million a year. He's produced more than Granlund has when he's played, but at the same time, like he's also, maybe not the prospect or the potential player that Granlund is. So it's like, well, and especially coming off the season that he had where he was definitely worse than Granlund. It's a tough call to know what to sign him for. But yeah, I think 1.75 is probably pretty fair.
And just in my experience, just kind of the last season going into their RFA deal is always kind of taken more into effect than previous years. So that's probably why, Zucker and Dumba have a little more less salary than what they probably should make, but that's why they're getting bridge deals. And I gave Dumba the exact same bridge deal you did.
Yeah.
2 years, $4 million, and then Grayovac, 2 years, $1.5 million, so $750,000.
It's the same exact deal I gave him.
You're stealing
too.
my notes.
I didn't even look at yours when I made mine. Actually, that's just we're just that on point. We're just that mind melding at this point.
And then the other RFA I brought back was Jordan Schrader. Gave him pretty much the same deal he signed 2 years ago. 2 years, it was $1.3 million, I believe, and the flex of just being able to move him up and down in Iowa and the NHL. Let's see. And then I brought back Fontaine. I don't know. You got to think he did not have a good year, so you'd think he'd be willing to just take a flyer and 1 year deal for a low cap hit to just maybe cash in on a bigger contract next summer. And so I gave him an $850,000 deal. I don't know. That's probably a stretch, but
yeah, I had signed him initially on mine, and I actually assumed that he was going to get somewhere in the range of like a 3-year, $2 million per kind of deal. That might be a little rich for him, though. I think you're right. I don't know that you can sign him for under $1 million at this point. But I think $2 million, like we talked about in the UFA episode, is probably the tippy top of what he could possibly earn. So it's probably somewhere in the middle, to be honest.
Yeah, it is probably around more of $1 million. But like I said, he might be willing to just take a little less and see if he can cash in big on the next deal next summer.
Yeah.
And then I did bring back Chris Porter, $600,000 for 1 year. Just he can be that 13th forward.
Yeah.
I don't like him playing, more than half the games in a season, but I think he's, somewhat useful in the half he plays.
Okay.
But as we've said before, play more than that. That's pushing it.
Or when you're called the best forward on the team by your head coach in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
No bueno.
And then I dipped into the actual free agent pool, and I signed Sam Gagner from Philadelphia. He did not have a good year. Kind of another guy you could take a flyer on a one-year deal, and he used to be a pretty consistent 40-point scorer, but he only had 18 points or something last year, and the Flyers, and I gave him $1.5 million for 1 year, and he's only 26, so he seems like a decent guy who could maybe turn it around. He could strike gold there. And then I signed, I don't know if this is probably another stretch on my part, but given the weird circumstances happening in Florida, I don't know what they're going to do with their roster, so I signed Al Montoya to be the backup goaltender. I gave him a 2-year deal for $3 million.
Okay.
He's a pretty stable backup.
Yep.
And if he hits the market, definitely a guy that the Wild should get after.
Yeah.
So
and I think him and knowing that you signed Montoya is more or less why I signed Khudobin, because I wanted to do something a little bit different. But it's like we talked about with Kemper being dealt. There's a lot of backup goalies out there that I think you can sign for that 1.5 or anywhere from $1 million to $2 million contract. And they're all going to produce relatively similar to what Kemper is able to do as a backup. So I'm 100% with you on that. I did almost the exact same thing, just with a different goalie with Khudobin. So,
all right, that kind of sets up my first trade. Mm-hmm. I traded Darcy Kemper to Calgary for one of their second-round picks. It was originally belonged to Dallas, but I believe they got that in the Chris Russell trade.
Yep.
So I got a second-round pick out of the deal. I forgot to throw this in there. One small extension. I gave Niederreiter a 5-year, $20 million extension.
Nice.
So I'm sure I'll get lambasted on Twitter for doing that, but...
By who?
I don't know. I'm sure somebody will light me up, but... that's a pretty good deal, and
yeah,
he'd be foolish to not take that.
Yeah.
I tried to figure this out. I think this buys out a couple years of his UFA stat, but I couldn't hammer that down for sure. But that takes him to 28, 29, something like that.
Yep.
So definitely UFA at the end.
Yep.
And with a top 6 role, he's probably going to start producing more. And we talked about this.
Yep.
I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but he's a guy you kind of want to lock up now and not let it get to that point where he could cash in big time next offseason if you don't. And then I think the last thing I have here is my giant blockbuster trade, which I did. I kind of poked fun at the Rangers fan, but I did make a trade with the Rangers where I sent Granlund, Brodin, Poland, who I think the Wild might move in some shape or fashion this offseason, because I don't really know if they're that big on him anymore.
Right.
And I also sent the first-round pick, which, like I said, 2 weeks ago I wasn't overly big on it. Now it's, let's move it, get somebody in here. Mm-hmm. And I picked up Derek Stepan, be the top-line center, and then Kevin Klein, who can give good depth on second or third D pairing, good penalty killer, at least from what I've gathered. I'd have to do more studying on that, and then a third-round pick in 2017.
Sure.
That was the big trade. I think Granlund can thrive out east, and he could be a second-line center for the Rangers, and he'll probably do really good out there. And Brodin kind of gives them a stable defenseman that they really need, because they're really hurting for decent defensemen who can, play defense.
Yeah.
Henrik Lundqvist got hung out to dry in the playoffs, and so the Rangers are definitely going to be in the market for probably a more stay-at-home defenseman. That's why I think Brodin worked better in this trade than a Scandella.
Sure.
Who I believe has more trade value than Brodin, but Brodin kind of fits more what the Rangers are looking for.
Yep.
So yeah, I was left with $535,000 in cap space.
Oof.
But I have 13 forwards and 7 defensemen on the roster, so it's a pretty full roster.
Yeah.
You can always send a guy down if you need to, but just kind of looking here, my forwards are Parisi, Stepan, Niederreiter, Zucker, Koivu, Coyle, and then my bottom 6 is also kind of a nudge at pushing Eric Hall into doing bigger and better things, because I got Graovac on the wing, Halla at third line center, and then Pominville on the wing, and then Schrader, Gagne, Fontaine is the fourth, and
Nice.
Porter as the extra. So in that scenario, hopefully Halla can put it together a full season like we saw at the end, and if not, there's pieces in place to kind of be a fallback in case he doesn't.
Sure.
And also Graovac's there just because I needed a small salary in there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what he ends up signing for and what this team thinks of him long term, because they're obviously very high on him, but then he really couldn't get. I mean, he really got his season really got derailed. So it's tough to say. And then also, you've got Alex Tuck waiting in the wings. And while I think he very obviously starts the season in AHL, and this is maybe more of a question that we cover in September, but I don't think he stays there the whole season, you know what I mean? So it's entirely possible to me that Tuck, at the very least, makes a cameo this season, and maybe we see what happens from there.
I don't know. He didn't really impress me this season at Boston College. So I'd err on the side of caution of calling him up unnecessarily.
Oh no, I agree. I'm just saying that it's a possibility.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but to me that would be a slim possibility.
Sure.
I would see him as a candidate to just be in Iowa all year and really kind of make the transition to pro hockey and
maybe
all that. There's probably some lesser skilled forwards I'd probably call up before him, but
yeah, I don't think you call him up to play in the fourth line. That's for sure. I mean, that's just it doesn't make any sense, especially with his skill set. Yule Eriksson Ek, if and when he comes up, you could probably call him up on the fourth line because he's noted for having that 200-foot game. But Tuck is definitely a guy that you don't call up to put in the fourth line. I mean, if anyone, it just makes zero sense to have him up on the fourth line. So. I think he's probably the type to get the call if there's a top 9 injury, and only if there's a top 9 injury. And I agree with you. I don't think he's going to be the first call they make. Definitely, and he shouldn't be. Because he probably does need some time to adjust to professional game, the professional lifestyle, that sort of thing. He's still only 20, 21, so you can definitely be patient with that guy.
Yeah, no, they're decent enough now at the NHL level where they don't need to just call them up just purely out of need like they did with, Granlund, Brodin, Coyle, Halla, Kemper.
Yeah.
All these guys who probably could have used a little more seasoning in the AHL, but they had to be rushed to the NHL because when you have guys like Warren Peters playing second line center. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that, I didn't get to my defense. It is a little scary when you take a Scandella or Brodeen out of the mix, because it basically is going to push, Matt Dumba, or Mike Riley into the top 4.
Yep.
But just for whatever, I have the second pair is Scandella, Dumba, and the third pair is Klein, Riley, and Prosser as the extra. But, knowing how this team goes, Riley probably just starts the year in Iowa because we love Nate Prosser.
Well, I mean, you don't know if that's what Bruce thinks. I mean, that was. I mean, like we had the episode Nate Prosser bromance because Mike Yo very clearly loved Nate Prosser, but we don't know if that's the case anymore. So, but I think you're right, and yeah, I mean, pushing Dumba into the top 4 is a little scary. It's a little bit trial by fire for a 21-year-old kid who's got a world of potential, but definitely has aspects of his game that he needs to improve on. And the pairing of him, just looking at my roster, the pairing of him and Brodeen seemed to be a good and a bad thing last season when they started off the season with those two together. So it seemed to be a lot of chemistry there, but at the same time, it felt like Dumba left Brodeen hanging out to dry a fair amount. So. Yeah, and then the same thing for you. I mean, you've got Scandella, a guy that you kind of can lean on, and a guy who's very, who could probably be hung out to dry by Dumba, a la Brodeen, a fair amount if you press Dumba into top 4 minutes. But with the depth that you have at defense, that's just kind of what you run into, and there's there's much worse people that you could be plugging into your top 4 than Matt Dumba. So, I think it's the reason why they would make this trade, while they make either one of our trades, the defense for offense trade, is because they do have a lot of depth. And I like what I saw out of Mike Riley in the little bits that I saw him. I think that, much like Dumba, he's probably got some things to work on. And whether he starts the season on the third pairing or in Iowa remains to be seen. But, and we haven't even mentioned Gustav Olofsson yet. And is probably being the main reason why Christian Folin is expendable. So, we'll see. But they seem to be defense rich, and plugging Dumba to the top 4 is a little scary and iffy, maybe. But I think it's something that you got to do. I think that you're better off doing that than standing pat with the roster that you have.
It's a risk. It's a risk you got to take. And,
yep.
And you and I are both kind of in agreement that Dumba needs to stick around and don't give up on him.
And he's going to get better with more minutes, and that's how you get him more minutes. I mean, him being on the third line / being a healthy scratch. I think you still can improve a player. It's not like a video game where if you don't play a player, he regresses. But if you really want him to improve, dramatically, you got to play him. And I think that's hopefully what we see with Dumba this season.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I was just kind of looking at other teams and their cap situation headed into next year, and the Wild isn't nearly as bad as like the Penguins.
Penguins, I know what the
are in extreme cap hell.
Holy crap!
They're already over the cap. If the cap's at $71.4 million, they're over it for next season.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of salary to shed, and they actually don't have really anybody of note besides Matt Cullen to really sign.
Yeah. But that's even going to be tough, and it's like, well, they're going to have to make a trade somewhere in there, and that's something I covered when I did the piece about the trading partners for the Wild. I did throw the Penguins in there, and I basically said, not that the Wild can take on a whole lot of salary, but the Penguins have a lot of offensive talent, and they definitely need to shed some salary. So it's entirely and also, I mean, the defense in Pittsburgh is wafer thin. So I mean, getting a guy like Brodeen or a guy like Scandella and shipping out some rather expensive offensive players could be just what the doctor ordered for Pittsburgh. I don't see that happening. Like I said, the
No,
Wild can't really take on a salary dump trade right now either. But if there's a will, there's a way, and maybe somehow, some way, something gets done. I don't know who you get from that team, but there's certainly a lot of options.
No, I don't really see them being trade partners.
Right.
But
They could save
know.
$2 million by trading Sidney Crosby for Mikko Koivu.
It's just weirder things have happened.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess we can move on out of that segment. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Now that we've kind of covered the whole off season.
I imagine next week,
especially if the Cup Finals goes for another podcast. That'll really hurt. Next week we'll just have immense amount of Jersey talk.
Basically.
So, hey, speaking of Jersey talk, let's do that.
All right, should I hit it?
Yeah, hit it.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
Man, when I listen with my headphones, that drop is obscenely loud.
I don't know. I don't go back and listen, so I don't know if it actually plays loud when.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's much louder than the way we talk, but just in these headphones that I'm wearing, it's like that is quite loud. But so was the intro, so I guess whatever. Anyway,
we
jerseys.
got plenty of talk about here for jerseys.
We do.
First of which was the highly anticipated Florida Panthers jersey release, which I was working when this happened, and somebody alerted me to it, and so I quick jumped into the Wi-Fi and opened up Twitter, and I looked at it, and oh boy, my initial thought is this is a rare time where my first thought just over time just stays true. Like usually I'll just kind of something will grow on me. My initial thought was, this is more like a football jersey. Mm-hmm. Like, it just... Mm-hmm. The numbers on the shoulders just kill me.
Yeah.
And the stripe going right through the middle of the jersey just... Like, I love the bold colors. I love the shield. I just don't like how they put this all in a jersey.
Yeah.
It's obviously a much more simple look than what they had, because when you're replacing a Reebok Edge puke jersey, that's not hard to beat.
Right.
But I'm kind of disappointed with this. Maybe if you just lose the stripe in the middle, this is probably a much better product. But yeah, it was just kind of disappointing.
Yeah, and I love the stripe in the middle on the Canadians, and it's very historic and that kind of thing.
The Canadians.
Yeah, that's kind of it too, and it's just like this. I just don't quite like this nearly as much. Like it just. There's things that I'm just like, I don't like the logo as much as you do. I think that it's, I don't know, it just seems like, I don't know, it's very soccerish to me, the logo. And that's not a terrible thing, and there's certainly, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't quite look like a hockey crest to me, especially with the Florida and or the Panthers running across the top like that. And I know there's a lot of homage to the military there, and I love that. That's great, especially with, the owner is a very passionate, he's a West Point graduate, and that's what a lot of this came from. So that's cool, but it just, the logo, it doesn't really look like a hockey logo to me, and not that there's a lot of, very, super hockey-ish looking logos out there, but this just kind of, it looks like it's done in the style of a European soccer team, you know what I mean? And so that's why I joked. And when it got released, that was the first joke I made, was that they're Florida HC now. They're not the Panthers. I mean, we'll call them the Panthers, but the official name of the team is Florida HC. So please continue on that bit, if you could be so kind.
Panthers HC. They're such a weird team right now.
I know.
I don't get them. I don't know.
And so what? Another thing too, and they turned their current primary, or their old, I should say, primary logo, the jumping cat that they've had for decades now, and they cleaned it up and they redid it, and now it's like a tertiary logo that they don't. I don't know where they're going to use it. I think they're going to use it on the helmets. I think I saw it, where it's different and it's cleaned up. But it's just like, why couldn't you just do that? You know, like that just seems like you could have just used that instead of this shield logo. And there's already, obviously on Twitter, of course, it didn't take long for somebody to Photoshop Nala from The Lion King into the Panthers shield logo, which it looks disturbingly similar. So that's kind of the point to be made. I don't know. And what are your opinions on the shoulder patches and that whole situation?
They're all right. I don't mind them. It, probably was a good upgrade in the shoulder patch department for them. Mm-hmm. Although I didn't really mind the ones they had either. Yeah. I thought those were all right. But it's just more of the numbers on the shoulders and the middle stripe is just what kills me. And the numbers are good, the name's good. It's I don't know, killing me. Yeah. And
then did you see the whole captain alternate patch thing?
No.
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
No.
Oh. So on those shoulder patches, it says Florida in like a arcing, kind of similar to the shield logo. So over the top, you've got the Florida state flag. Then you've got like a panther, like a full-bodied panther image, and then over the top of that you've got like an arced Florida. Well, supposedly, and I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but if for the captains and the alternate captains, it's going to say captain in the same font and style over Florida on the shoulder patches.
So there won't be a visible C or A.
That's the question, and that's something that me and Taylor, friend of the podcast, Taylor Calais, were discussing on Friday. Was he really liked the idea. He really liked the jerseys in whole, and I was more lukewarm on the jerseys, and I like the idea of doing the whole captain and alternate. It's a shoulder. It's like a chevron or whatever, for the military kind of idea. More, military kind of based stuff, but if they do that and the C or the A patch, I don't like it almost at all. But if they do it in lieu of the C or the A patch, I like it, but I'm just kind of a big fan of how the C and the A look on hockey sweaters, you know what I mean? Right. So I'm torn, because if you're going to replace the C or the A patch with anything, I think this is a really cool way to do it. But, that being said, I still don't think it's going to look quite as good as the C or the A patch, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So, because, I don't know. It's just, that's something that, it's a nuance of this jersey that I'm rather unsure about. And if anything grows on me, that might be it. Because I don't think the rest of the jersey particularly will, so. Oh, well.
Anyway, I suppose we could, we've ranted enough about these.
Sure.
Well, we could probably spend another 10 minutes going over how...
Do we know if the Maple Leafs are releasing their jerseys sometime soon? They released the logo.
It's probably going to be like at the draft.
Draft, yeah.
They'll probably have Matthews Cup in their New Jersey.
Yeah, that's true.
I am, excited for those, because Maple Leafs are one of the... always just seemingly have a top jersey in the league.
Sure.
So those should not disappoint, or at least I would think they won't disappoint. But, and this also in the last week, kind of another newsy topic was jersey ads. Kind of revealed that the World Cup of Hockey will have some kind of jersey, or at least they're trying to get jersey ads on these jerseys. They haven't had any takers yet, because apparently the price is pretty steep.
Yeah.
So that would be very NHL to just price themselves out of advertisements on the jerseys. But
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
you have
Well-
to pay a steep price for this sacred space.
And it all kind of stems from the NBA doing it, and so that kind of opened the floodgates. The 76ers, the first, of the big four to put an ad on their jerseys for next season. It's been announced they're going to have StubHub on their jerseys, just as a little, chest patch kind of thing. But still, it's noteworthy. No, but, it's just kind of like, for me, the patch is so small, which is good, don't get me wrong. I love the fact that it's like the size of a frickin' quarter. But they're getting, I think, $4 million for it for the whole season. And it's like, okay, why? Not that $4 million is nothing to sneeze at. Clearly it is for you and for me. But for a professional sports franchise, they crap $4 million. You know what I mean? This really isn't, something that you desperately need to make your team profitable. And it just seems like more trouble than it's worth to have to spend $4 million on, or to have to get $4 million on putting jersey patches on.
I'm just indifferent to jersey ads at this point, and I know there's a lot of people out there who probably, very much against it.
Right.
If they put ads on the jerseys, whatever. I'm kind of used to it at this point with watching, soccer and
Right.
getting a good dosage of, the AHL this season.
Mm-hmm.
I'll only draw the line at putting them on jerseys the fans buy. I don't want that.
Well, that's happening as well. I mean, the 70s, that was part of the deal with the 76ers that...
Oh, it was?
Yeah, I believe the situation was everything sold in that market was going to have that jersey ad, but 76er jerseys sold outside of the market were not going to have the jersey ad, which is kind of weird. Where you draw the line on that. That's what I understood. Maybe I'm way off on that, but that's just kind of how I understood it. But it's like, well, that's kind of weird because if I'm a Sixers fan, I'm buying a jersey on eBay or from a website where I can, get it from outside of the area and not have to have that stupid jersey patch. I don't. As much as it becomes part of your team's identity, I suppose, kind of like the Lynx and the Mayo Clinic. I don't want that on my jersey. Especially if it's just a stupid little patch where it's like it means nothing other than the team getting a payday.
We'll see how that goes. Like I said, the NHL has seemingly priced themselves out of the jersey ads right now. So
Which isn't a bad thing.
very, very NHL.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part of the jersey segment is talking about actual teams themselves from the WHA, and you're gonna have to remind me which teams those are.
Well, we wanted to do this whole defunct team series, and so I made a list of the defunct teams, at least since the 67 expansion. So the teams that have gone defunct since then. So we covered the 2 teams in Atlanta, and then we have 3 teams that were all WHA teams that went into the league, but then moved. Obviously, yeah, they moved to they relocated. So those 3 teams would be the Quebec Nordiques, the Hartford Whalers, and the original Winnipeg Jets. And those 3 teams were, all WHA teams that moved to the NHL and then subsequently were relocated. So it makes kind of a tight little grouping because they don't have any other kind of relation otherwise. But it's, kind of cool. They're 3 WHA teams. And their jerseys didn't really change from the WHA to the NHL for the most part, so that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. I'll lead off here with Quebec. And this is for their entire existence. This was pretty much the same thing, and very minor tweaks to these uniforms, and it was a good look.
Yes,
I liked it, but unfortunately, I have no memory of seeing these like live in person,
Right.
like live on TV or whatever.
Me neither.
They left after '95, and they became a team I don't like. So, yeah, I mean, this is just probably one of the better ones you'll see. Just the logo, the jersey, all of it, just solid.
Yeah, it was a really good, simple look, and the fleur de lis obviously was it was a beautiful, nice touch, and it made a lot of sense, them being in Quebec and all. So, the logo was super simple, and but now it's become so iconic. It's been copied. Like I know Lakeville North basically uses the same thing, it's a great look. It's just a great classic look that it might come off as a little dated. If you, especially if you were to see a team wearing it now, other than like a throwback kind of thing, might look a little bit dated, but I think it's a solid look. I think that like I said, there's a lot of charm to it, whether it be the super almost overly simple logo or the copious amounts of fleur de lis on the jersey. I think it all kind of works for what they had going on up there.
Yeah. But I guess maybe the one good thing that came from the Nordiques moving to Colorado was we didn't get these.
The wolf?
The wolf Nordiques logo jersey deal that they were reportedly gonna go with had the team stayed, but
that would have ruined it.
I don't know. I'm not well versed in how the Nordiques skip town, but
I think they were playing in a relatively small arena. It was kind of like a Met Center type situation where the arena was just fine for watching a hockey game, but there really wasn't a whole lot of room for suites, and it just wasn't a very modern arena.
So their owner was also facing harassment charges?
No, I don't think it was that, but and then also I think they had a lot of trouble finding corporate sponsorship in Quebec, which is kind of the lifeblood of professional franchises now. Because it's Quebec City, and it's not a very big city, and it's a hockey crazy area, obviously. Right. But you can only do so much with your middle class fans buying tickets. You really need to have those giant corporations dumping thousands and thousands of dollars into your team every night to make a profitable hockey team with the current salary structure. So I think that was kind of the issue with Quebec City having a hockey team, because I don't think there's nearly as much industry there as they would like. So I think that was the thing. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I do recall reading something along those lines as to why they had to move.
I'll have to look it up when I get some free time. But,
sure.
All right, Winnipeg, the first edition of Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
Another kind of solid set. They did have a big change in the beginning of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But even that was a change for the better.
Yeah.
Their first logo was very 70s.
It was very 70s. Yeah.
But then in 90 they went with a really good logo. It's actually one of my favorite logos / jerseys in hockey. Is that last Jets 1 jersey.
Sure.
More so because Teemu Selanne award.
Right.
But it's just it's a good look, and it was a good logo, and those are rare nowadays. So a big respect for the past of Winnipeg.
Yeah. Yeah, those Jets jerseys. I mean, there's a reason why they kind of have stood the test of time, and a lot of people still really like them. They were a good-looking jersey, and like you said, the logo redesign was definitely very well needed. Took out kind of a wonky font that they were using before that, and then they had a plane which was just kind of a weird, like, I don't even know what you would describe it as, but it's just a circle with a plane in it, and it just looked kind of goofy. But that 90 to 96 jersey for the Jets is just absolutely beautiful. Solani made it even more beautiful, and it was really cool a couple years ago when the Jets played Anaheim on Solani night and they all wore that jersey. I wish that they would crack it out more often, but seeing as how they got the name back, I don't know how they don't stick with the jersey, but that's just me.
Well, I'm sure the NHL has something to do with it. And
yeah, you're probably
blah,
right.
blah, blah.
Yeah. Boo.
Yeah. Sidebar, I think it was like Stadium, I forget what it was. Some site that, ranks arenas and stadiums in all the leagues annually came out with their NHL stadium rankings, and the Wild finished second, or I should say XL Energy Center finished second, and they finished second weirdly to the Winnipeg Jets. So I tweeted, not used to looking up at Winnipeg in the standings.
Zing. This was recently, I take it?
Somebody will probably fire that one back in a few years down the line.
Well, and so were they talking about, like, fan experience then, obviously?
Yeah, just
okay.
All the basic, like, things you think about in an arena and atmosphere and whatever. So everything pretty much taken into account. And
well, because you've been to MCS Center, right?
No.
Oh.
I always say, next year I'm going to go. And then
okay, I just assumed you had.
This year, I'll just say it. I'm not planning on going next year.
Okay, fair enough.
Probably going to try and hit Detroit.
The last year of the Joe
Louis.
Yeah,
arena.
that does make a lot of sense. Maybe I should join you. I guess I could see that with MCS because it is kind of a madhouse. I mean, we've seen that certainly. With their playoff, their whopping playoff 2 games last year was a madhouse, and it was absolutely a very emotional and a very neat thing to see that city respond like that. But I don't know. I don't know that I would put that arena ahead of XL. I'm sure it's a nice arena, but from what I've heard, it's a little smallish, and I don't know that I don't even know how old it is or anything. But I doubt it has quite the amenities that XL has.
No, I don't think it was. That's why I kind of raised an eyebrow at it.
Right.
But, whatever. It's just
that is what
as long as the Wild are somewhere in the top.
And if you're going purely,
always,
if you're going purely after fan experience, then whatever. I mean, I could see an argument to be made there.
Their last couple of years, they've really taken a lot of big steps in improving the fan experience and whatnot. So I'll give them that.
Yeah. Well, that and
it was
they
actually a few years ago. I wrote a thing on like the 5 things that need to change, and actually it was in my time hop the other day. So I went back and I read it, and they kind of. I don't know, maybe they just read it and followed my plans, because everything I said basically has changed for the better now.
That's good.
So, I don't know. I'm sure that's what they do. They sit around and wait for me to write something.
Well, apparently that's what happens at ESPN, so...
Nice. You got me there, ESPN.
I mean, and their team actually knows that their team has a 1-syllable name, so I guess I would give them the edge as well. Because they know that their team only has 1 syllable in its name, and they chant accordingly. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Why don't you just say you're a lifelong Jets fan then?
I'm not letting that go. I am until Y old is dead. I will not let it go.
Anyway, before we get into a brawl about this again. We got the last WHA team was the Hartford Whalers.
And this should put us in a good mood.
This is, again, one of the best logos in the history of the NHL.
Agreed.
The jerseys, for the most part, were pretty simple. Basically green with white and blue trim until their last jerseys was heavy blue and gray with green trim, which was a kind of a weird turn. But
yeah.
The logo being so good was just holding it up.
Was there some kind of early 90s prejudice against the color green? Because I just realized right now that the Whalers and the North Stars both changed their jerseys in the same season.
At least they didn't try to go with teal.
That's what I'm saying. The North Stars and the Whalers get rid of green primary jerseys, and then you have 8 teams that are wearing teal the next season. So
yeah.
I don't understand it.
No, I don't either. Like I said, it was a good jersey history for the most part. I liked the Whalers looks, and I got a Whalers hat somewhere that I haven't worn in a while. I should probably get that out and wear it again. But those were 3 solid looking teams.
Yeah,
top to bottom. So,
do we want to talk about Cooper Ells?
That's no, I'm not.
No.
For that.
Okay, that is fair. I'll give you that.
Yeah, you gotta get me in the right mood to be getting
talk about Cooper Ells. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I go out on that good note with all the good jerseys and logos and whatnot. That,
yes.
Probably wrap up this episode. We'll be back next week in unnamed bar with unnamed special guest.
Sure.
For those who are still listening to us. That's why I'm more convinced to get the iTunes plug at the beginning of the show, because
that's probably
cut out by the end, because we talk far too long.
All of these people have no idea that we've even been plugging the iTunes thing for months now.
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's been a thing?
Oh, I should... Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah.
2 stars.
But, yeah, again, find us on iTunes, and rate us on iTunes, find us on Libsyn.
Yes.
For those anti-iTunes people. You can find it too at wildextra.com, along with all of our collected writings. So yeah, we will, like I said, we'll be back next week. Another Sunday recording. Should be a fun episode. If it's a light news week and the Stanley Cup Finals goes into the next week, then heavy jersey talk.
Yeah.
Coming ahead. So, but yeah, I'm gotta get to bed. So I gotta be at work at 4 a.m. So we're gonna call this episode. So we will talk to you next week.
Alrighty. Thank you. Bye.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.
Covers me. Can you, my darling? Can you picture this? Dream if you can, courtyard, an ocean of violets in bloom.